few years ago. I was working at a pizza chain in my hometown as a driver. I was 27, but made damn good money delivering. I'd worked at a few other places, both local and chain, in the years before, and still work as a dasher on occasion even after this happened. Now I choose to deliver in much safer areas for this reason. I got luckier than I could ever imagine. One night I was working and I had a double, 2 deliveries to take. Both were cash orders, and $12 left in my bank. The first order went smoothly. The guy gave me $50 for a $35 order, so I was excited about that nice tip. I drove to the second delivery. It was at an apartment complex with multiple buildings. I had delivered here before. The sun was about to set, but it was still very light out. The chain I worked at had us all drive company cars with a logo on it, all white sedans. This is important for later. I grab the order and go up to the door of the apartment building. A young guy comes out, and a much bigger guy, an older guy, was outside smoking a cigarette. The big guy went inside as the smaller guy came outside. He looked around nervously and asked how much he owed me. The way he was looking around just made me nervous. The hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I told him the amount, and he told me that that wasn't what he was told on the phone. Something was wrong. I felt someone else walk out behind me from the door. The first young guy looked down around the parking lot, craning his neck, as if he was looking for someone. I told him the amount again, and broke down the order for him, trying to keep myself calm. Then, the first guy held a gun to my right temple. I also felt a poke in my spine. 2 gunmen. I couldn't speak. Words wouldn't form no matter how hard I tried.
"Give me your money and your keys. Now,"
the first guy growled. I fumbled for my keys immediately. Gave him my bank, but hadn't realized the 50 was also mixed in. I gave him the keys, trying my best to remain calm. Another guy came up from my left. He had poofy hair and was around the same age as the first kid. The one behind me I hadn't seen yet. The big-haired kid grabbed the pizza bag and ran off and hid. The first kid searched the company car. Luckily, I'd left my wallet in my personal car. Saw him grab my cell phone, and that's when panic began to set in. Pictures on that phone that I hadn't backed up of my then 5-year-old son, who was my absolute world. Please, don't take that. I have pictures of my son who died on there. It's all I have left of him, please. I lied. My son is very much alive. And the kid behind me spoke softly. "Trust me, just listen to him. We'll get it back undamaged. I don't want to be here either." I could tell he'd been crying by how his voice sounded. Another car pulled in. All 3 boys took off to the other end of the complex in a full sprint. Before the one behind me ran, he dropped the gun in front of me. It was a standard issue 9mm, silver and black. Safety was off. It looked completely real to me. He picked it back up and ran with the others. The car that pulled in saw me. It was a woman and her kid. Panic set in as I realized they could easily come back now and do way worse to me as the sky started to get dark. I collapsed. They had taken my company car keys, $72, the pizza, and my phone. The woman ran up to me and asked if I was alright. She took me into her apartment in the next building over and locked the door. I was shaking so hard I couldn't even hold the phone to talk to 911. Her boyfriend, or I assume was her boyfriend, helped me call. I spoke to the operator and told her everything that happened. I'm colorblind, and these kids were obviously wearing all black and white clothes. Thank God. I did have a full description of 2 of them. The poor woman who helped me was going to be late for work, but she stayed until I was off the phone and the cops had shown up. Man, she was harsh and blunt with the operator. But I'll never forget this woman's utter kindness to help me. And her boyfriend's. The cops show up and contacted my store and my manager. They brought out the spare keys for me to drive the car back to the store. After dealing with the cops, I drove back. I was greeted by crying and beyond worried coworkers. All of them were terrified that I was hurt. It did mean a lot to me how much they care, but I told them I was fine. I filed the proper paperwork. The 72 was written off as a loss to the store. Thank God, because I'd worked other stores that make you pay back the money out of pocket if you get robbed, to prevent drivers from stealing. I was then told by the owner to take the rest of the night off and take care of myself. He gave me a hug. He was to this day one of the best bosses that I've ever had. What I didn't know was I was in for a very long night. I called my best friend before I left the store and asked where he was. We usually would meet up for a drink after work. He said he was around the corner at a bar, so I met up with him. His dad was a District 4 cop in my city at the time, the same district that this happened in. He told me his dad had given him a heads up, and he had 2 shots waiting for me to calm my nerves. After those 2 shots, we began playing pool when his dad called his phone and asked if I was with him yet. He told him I was and handed me the phone. His dad asked if I could come to the station. I was honest with him. I told him that I'd have 2 shots, so he ended up sending a squad car to meet me since it really wasn't that far away. When we got to the station, they had suspects in custody, and I was needed to ID them. 3 boys and a driver. They'd been caught less than 20 minutes after the robbery, speeding. The bolo had already gone out, and they matched the description. They had used the money to buy weed, gas, and then taken off. They had at least 15 stolen cell phones on them. The order had been placed on a stolen phone, and my phone was in the mix of the box. The police told me to grab my phone only, and I did. They asked me to unlock it, and I told the police again every detail. My parental instincts kicked in. I told them the guy behind me quite obviously was bullied into this, and to show him mercy. He was the one with the white shirt. The police went wide-eyed and told me that he was the one that was talking. The other 3 denied involvement. And that's when I found out about the 4th guy, the driver. We found out later that he was completely unaware of the robbery, was just picking up his friends. He was never charged. The boy who was behind me and the one who grabbed the pizza were 15 and 16. He got 6 months house arrest. The only reason the one behind me got off as easy, despite having the gun to my back, was because I asked them to go easy on him. Since he seemed like a good kid who really didn't want to be there. He was the only one confessing. It makes sense, since he'd even said the other guy wouldn't have the phone for long. He was planning on going to the cops had they not actually been caught. But the other guy, the first kid who put the gun to my temple, it was his 18th birthday, and he got the book thrown at him. In the courtroom, he made fun of me, was laughing at me. Seeing him again made me panic. The judge scolded him for his behavior. He just grinned and glared at me with a Joker-like grin. All I could see in those moments was pure evil. This kid will commit more crimes, I have no doubt about it. You can see how cold he is just by looking into his eyes, and I'd never seen this kind of evil in my life, and I never want to again. I asked to have my name stricken from the records, and asked to remain anonymous in case he ever got out. I'm so glad I did. Because today, I got a letter from the state. He's being released in February. The court only had my old address, which was my parents' house. My mom didn't think the letter was important. I missed the deadline to protest his release for probation. The plea deal was 8 years, and it's only been 4. He's getting out early due to overcrowding. Not good behavior, overcrowding. And that's this coming February. I'm ready if he finds me. My wife, my parents. Everyone now knows his face and his name. If he tries anything, we're all ready. But for his sake, let's not meet. To the woman and her family who helped me, I was a woman then. I'm trans. If you see this, please know my undying gratitude for you all. It was inconvenient for you, and yet you were still late to work to help me. Cannot thank you enough. I bought Christmas presents for your daughter, but when I went back to the landlord there to find you, you'd moved. I don't want to be a creep and stalk your new place, but I'm glad you got out of that bad neighborhood. I hope your beautiful baby girl is doing well too. I'll gladly meet you again if given the proper thanks you deserve. From the Domino's driver in Southwest Ohio. Edit. He's already got a warrant out for new crimes. I don't know the details, but I know there was another victim based on the type of crime committed. 3 of them. Got let out on February 2nd, and the warrants are from February 22nd. I've been watching his Facebook since everything was public, just making sure he was staying away from my family. I hadn't checked it since mid-February, so I just checked it now. I noticed he stopped posting. Originally, he was always posting, including asking for smoke and when he was going to be on Facebook. So that was unusual. So I checked the records page. More violent crimes have been committed. He's more than likely on the run. It looked like he was turning around, but I guess not. I know I tried my hardest to make sure he stayed in. Victim services do not care to listen, basically. And now he's hurt someone else. I feel horrible for that new victim. I know it's not my fault, but I can't help but feel like I'm partially guilty. I'll keep updating this as it develops. As of now, he's on the run. March 22, 2023. He's back in prison as of March 8 for 5 charges. If victim services has ever failed, it's now. I feel guilty and horrible, like I could have done more. He's being charged with violent crimes against individuals, possession of a weapon under disability, and homicide. Someone died by his hand. I tried to keep him locked up. I know this isn't my fault, yet I cannot stop the guilt. I hope this won't happen to anybody else by his hand. As of this point, it'll be years before we get a verdict, and more than likely, this may be the final update. Thank you all so much for your support. Stay safe out there, friends. It's a crazy, crazy world. This is going to take a while to explain everything, so just stay with me. It all comes round. My very first car was a dark green 2000 Volkswagen Jetta. It was the most basic of basics when it came to cars. No options whatsoever except for an automatic transmission. It was $300, slow, dumpy, and no right headlight. It drove straight with the steering wheel practically sideways. It would let out a cloud of white smoke when it started. Every stereotype of a poor high schooler's car you can think of. My car was no exception. Despite it being a piece of German crap, I loved that car, and I drove it every chance I had. Don't think a day went by that I didn't drive it. I named it Thunder Bunny. She was my baby, my beautiful green baby. But Volkswagens from that generation, Jettas especially, I'm not exactly sure what causes it, but essentially, the transmission gradually gets worse and worse until the car will not shift into third gear. And there's not a thing you can do from there. So a couple of weeks after Halloween 2019, I was going about 30 miles per hour when the engine just suddenly roared, and the car wouldn't speed up. I feared the worst, and my fears were justified. My dad, a mechanic, didn't even have hope for my baby. Much to my dismay, we started looking for a new car. It only took a month for us to find her, a dark green 1999 Volkswagen Jetta, exactly like my old car. She was faster, she had heated leather seats, automatic windows, auto sunroof, everything. All except for an automatic transmission. I knew how to drive manual, so it was perfect. I had my new baby, from crackhead neighbor girl to Scarlett Johansson, at least in my eyes. I loved that car even harder. I named it Little Boy and was happy. I started working as a pizza delivery driver in a smaller, growing town in Michigan. It was good money, but every once in a while I delivered to an incredibly sketchy place, and have had a few shotguns pulled on me. One night, about 2 months ago, I was delivering on a Friday. Usually Fridays are very busy, but for some reason this day was a little slow. So when a delivery came in at 8:30, half an hour before we closed, I jumped on it. I realized it was 7.1 miles away, so all of the closing jobs would be done by the time I got back, and I'd probably be able to leave immediately. It was way out of town in a woods-surrounded neighborhood, but again, no work when I get back to the store. Seems like a good deal to me. So I climbed into my car and went to drive 7.1 miles away. As I pulled up to the house, I began to get a bad feeling. The house was in a small trailer park type neighborhood next to a lake. No lights inside. Nothing inside. There's a single car in the driveway and an open window on the side of the house. I pull in behind the car in the driveway and just sat there for a moment. Something felt off. The house being completely dark. By the house being completely dark, and I mean dark, there wasn't even as much as a nightlight that I could see. Usually when I deliver to a dark house, there's at least a light on the upstairs or something that would signal that someone is awake and waiting for their pizza. The house seemed dead. Nevertheless, I put the car in gear, turned off the engine, grabbed the small, cheapest pizza we had, and got out. Without my headlights on, there was nothing. I could barely see the house itself, and the only light was coming from the dim moon. I walked onto the porch and past the big open window to the front door. As I reached the front door, I saw it. The door was slightly cracked open, just enough for me to see inside that void of a house. Thinking of every single horror movie that I'd ever seen, I said aloud, "Fuck that," and hurried back to my car. I'm a tall, well-built looking guy, despite my wide shoulders and baggy hoodie. A frail thing. Could hardly fight off a small dog. I got into my car and turned on the engine. My headlights illuminated the house, and almost simultaneously, the living room light behind the big open window lit up, and a single guy looked out and walked to the front door. I cussed to myself and weighed my options. If I went up to that door, I could die. If I noped out of there, I would be 110% fired. That meant no new car parts, no gas money, no cute dates with my girl. I'd be sitting at home doing virtual schoolwork. It was a stupid choice, I know, but I grabbed the pizza and opened up my door. Making a choice that I'm damn glad that I still made, I took the car out of gear and climbed out. Mostly so my engine would still be running, so that if I needed, I could run back and immediately take off. I walked up to the door, where the man had opened it the rest of the way. As I got closer, got a good look at him. I'm not one to judge a person based on their physical appearance, but this guy's head was cleanly shaven and was covered in tattoos. He was wearing a pair of gray jeans and a white tank top. He had a scowl on his face and was completely just staring me dead in the eyes. I looked past him for a moment into that house, which was completely empty. As I got close enough that I started opening up the pizza bag, he started to reach around his waist, and I stopped. He was staring at me with the most evil grin that I'd ever seen. I knew in that moment I was about to die. I'd always heard your life seems to flash before your eyes. I thought about my girl. She wouldn't know what had happened. My work would stop delivering upon my disappearance, assuming that my body would never be found. My dad would regret telling me that he was happy for me landing this job. And that's when I heard it. A distinct sound of gravel under tires. My only pathetically small chance of escape was rolling away, and I didn't even look back at the car to know that. I heard the sound of the car rolling, and it was getting closer. The guy's eyes went from the driveway to behind me. I finally looked over my shoulder. My car had rolled backwards, and had come to a smooth stop near the mailbox of the house. I looked back at the guy, who had a nervous look. He looked back at me and scowled again, and took his hand from around his waist. He reached into his front pocket and took out $12 and handed it to me. I quickly gave him the pizza and watched him slam the door shut. I ran back to my car and practically tore the door off, trying to get in. I looked back at the house, and the man was standing at the front window, staring out at me. You better believe I nearly spun the tires on my way out of there. I kept glancing at my mirrors until I started driving under streetlights again. It was easily the scariest moment I've ever experienced. As soon as I got back to the store, I told my boss about it, and she called the police. We never heard anything about it, and I assumed they went to the house and only found a small cheese pizza. I started carrying a knife on me at all times. My boss is considering getting trackers for our pizza bags. Only recently that I realized this is sort of a butterfly effect. I thought it was the worst thing ever that my transmission went out, and I cursed Volkswagen for designing such a terrible automatic transmission. But if it was still working, then I still would have my old car when this happened. I would have put the car in park and would have sat there while whatever was going to happen to me happened. Still to this day, I have zero doubts in my mind that that man was planning on murdering me. So, shitty German engineering saved me from getting murdered that night. I'm new to posting in Reddit. I normally just read, and I apologize if I'm not posting to the correct place. This event happened 7 years ago when I was still living in a small town in Illinois. My youngest was a few weeks old, so I was frequently up to feed him, so I slept downstairs with him, while my husband and older 2 children slept upstairs. I was woken up to someone knocking on the door. I was half asleep, and my only thought was getting to the door before it woke everyone else up. I was so sleep deprived, and I wasn't thinking straight. Otherwise, I wouldn't have answered the door so late at night. As I got to the door, my baby started to wake up, so I brought him with me. I opened up the door. There's a man standing there. I said, "How can I help you?" He just stood there for a moment and didn't say anything. At this point, I'm starting to wake up and become more observant. I remember feeling like he seemed nervous, which made me anxious. All he said was,
I'm sorry, I thought you ordered a pizza.
Then he grabbed a box off the table on the porch and walked away. I don't remember what I even said to him. I just closed the door and stood there feeling a bit strange, thinking how weird it was. Just told myself maybe he had the wrong house. So I'm walking back to the living room. Saw a clock and my stomach dropped. It was a little after 2 a.m. There's no places around that deliver that late. I went back to look outside, but I didn't see anyone. And there were no cars on the street. Made sure all the doors were locked, and I just remember sitting there, a little shaken, thinking how off I felt about this situation. Normally a pizza guy says hi, tells how much you owe. All he said was, I'm sorry, I thought you ordered one. The box was not with him. I didn't see it until he grabbed it off the table as he exited my porch. The table was a few feet away from the door. If he was holding it, I probably wouldn't have asked him how I could help him. I would have said something like, you're at the wrong house. I don't remember him wearing anything associated with the pizza place, or even a name tag. The only place that was nearby was a Pizza Hut. So I guess it's possible that he maybe had a jacket on, but I don't really remember. Nothing was open that late though, I'm sure about that. The nervous vibe I got off of him told me something was off. What was he doing? If he had bad intentions, I think he either saw that I had dogs or maybe the baby changed his mind. Whenever I think about it, I still get chills. I feel very lucky and fortunate that nothing happened to us that night. Hey everyone, thanks for listening if you stuck around to this point. If you haven't yet, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and that notification bell to be notified when future episodes come out. If you have a true scary story of your own, feel free to send it to my email or post it to my subreddit. You can stalk me on Twitter, you can stalk me on Facebook, and you can also stalk... And you can also stalk me on, what was the last one I said? Instagram. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Those three. Got it? Yeah, cool. All these links are below. Hey, hope you liked this episode. This was the least voted for on that poll. Yeah, I like polls. What of it? Bet you like polls too. The poll that I did the other day. And I had these stories already locked and loaded, so this is what you're getting. I just dropped a really long, big old thick boy, like at like 3 this morning, like 3 hours of true scary stories. So every month or every other month, I'm probably going to do one of those when all the stories start to accumulate and get, yeah, whatever. You get it. All right. Sunday, I don't know what I'm going to do, but you'll just find out on Sunday, won't you? If you care, if you're there. All right. I don't know. I'm going to go play Tears of the Kingdom and do laundry. So, yeah, I got a pretty rough day ahead of me. All right. I love y'all. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.